Welcome back to Confront Your Mind. I'm Jolynn,
I'm Tiffany. Join us as we talk about how to confront the uncomfortable in life,
while also allowing space for laughter as we learn. Hello. Today we're going to be introducing a new segment and
exciting times.
I'm going to let Tiffany take off on this one.
Yeah, so in this new segment, we are going to be starting the episode by explaining a mindfulness tip or a grounding tip. Or a technique or a book recommendation, which is what I'll be doing today, or a coping skill, just sharing some resources that we've found helpful in general. So I'll kick it off today.
Slay Queen.
And today is going to be a book recommendation.
Yes.
I don't know, this is kind of like hard to see, but this one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I am going to be sharing some quotes from it a little bit later on in the podcast. But this is, if I had to recommend, honestly, like Jolyn has heard me talk about this book so much, because if I had to recommend like one book that I think every single person should read, it would be this book. It is a very like practical way of being so we're going to talk about motivation today and
we're
routine.
Talking about motivation.
And so it talks about a very practical way and useful ways to actually, have routine and have motivation. And talks about, it says an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And then it also says tiny changes, remarkable results. But it really, I can't say enough about this book. Like, it is so, there's so many quotes in it. This is Jolynn's husband's copy because I forgot mine. But mine has, like, if I flipped through it, it just has so much highlighting in it. And it has a lot of diagrams too, which I love, because it'll have like little charts of like, like your brain. And then if you do that, like it has a lot of visuals in the book, which I find really helpful too. But it's a really good book. So that is my recommendation for today. Atomic Habits. Go read it.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about motivation. And we always start with a definition.
Yes.
Can I put this somewhere?
Yeah, I'll hold it.
I don't really want to hold it for the whole time. Here. Thank you.
We thought that one through real well.
I just didn't.
I'll put it right
there. My little OJ's in the way. Thank you. Handy dandy little bookshelf back there.
Yeah. That's what it's for.
Motivation, as defined by verywellmind.com, is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. Take it away.
Vroom, vroom. Motivation is what drives us. So another definition is like motivation is what drives us to get our needs met at baseline. There's also two different types of motivation. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they're really so much fun. So
can you tell me about it?
I got you.
Because I don't know what those are.
Yeah. So intrinsic motivation is the incentive we feel to complete a task simply because we find it interesting or enjoyable. But it's also kind of like, I also like to call it internal and external motivation because that's just easier for me to remember. But it's also kind of like what it relates to. But with intrinsic motivation, it's more based on like you as a person and like what your values are and what's important to you. But it's also considered the better of the two because what helps us find our drive within ourselves, right? So it's the part of it where if there's not like, well, I'll talk about extrinsic first and then I'll go back. But that's my brain today. My brain's like,
well.
So we're trying to keep up with the brain. But then there's extrinsic motivation.
It's those 2 cups of tea you've had.
It is. I'm just wired. I'm like wired, but also like really tired at the same time.
It's a Sunday.
I think
that's
so.
what it is.
Probably. But then extrinsic motivation is also similar to like external motivation. And it's the incentive we feel when there is an external reward for achieving a task. So like a lot of the times like there's this Well, there was this like study. I'm remembering this from like one of my classes now that I'm talking about it. I don't have it in our notes, so I'm probably gonna just totally
Go for it.
off the wallet. But there was a study that, and I don't think it actually had to do with motivation at all. It was like patience. It had to do with reward. But anyways, it was a study for like kids to learn kind of like if they. Oh, it was testing for awareness of like risk and reward or something like that. I don't know. I'm probably butchering the crap out of it. But basically they would put, it was like kids in different age groups. So they were trying to figure out like what age do you develop like awareness of like people watching you or like that you're going to get a reward if you are patient. And so they put these like kids from like ages, I think 2 to 7 in like a room by themselves. And they were like, so they'd leave the kids with like a single marshmallow. And they were like,
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah. Do you remember what they were testing for? Because I don't think it was motivation. But
it was, no, I think it was like, it's like what you were talking about, the reward thing. It's like, because if they waited, I think they got like more. Like they would get 2 marshmallows.
Yeah.
Or they could go ahead and take it and get one. But it was like testing maybe like willpower.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I can't remember, but I also didn't put it in our notes. So like you're just getting like the Jolene's version of this and Tiffany's version. Us both trying really hard to remember. But it's like they would exactly what Tiffany said. They'd be like, hey, you'll have 2 marshmallows if you can wait for the assistant to come back and like give you 2 marshmallows. And so they would see if the kids would wait. And what they found is like at a certain age, it was so funny because some kids would like lick the marshmallow but not eat it because they had a camera on them.
Smart kids.
Yeah. But yeah, so like the external reward would be like getting the 2 marshmallows if you're waiting, and the intrinsic, but like it would kind of be based on intrinsic motivation. So why do like we value like waiting? Is it because we value patience, or like, you know, I value patience and I want to be a patient person, so I'm gonna wait. Kids obviously that are 6 years old don't have awareness of this yet. But like if you were to apply it for awareness, if you were to say like, you know, I value patience and I want to be a patient person, and that's what motivates me is to be a patient person. That's intrinsic motivation. Whereas external motivation or extrinsic motivation would be like, well, I just really want 2 marshmallows instead of 1. So like, because I can put 2 marshmallows in both sides of my mouth and chew them at the same time. Because it's fun. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, but probably. We all live the same life. But that's...
What do you find that people use more, like, in your practice? Like, with your clients and stuff? Like, do you feel like people are more motivated by intrinsic or extrinsic?
That's a really good question. I think it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
Is honestly what I have found more than anything is that, you know, I think some people really do strive with external motivation. Like, oh, I've got to get a promotion, and so, like, I'm going to work my butt off to get this promotion. Or, like, or, like, because they want more money, or, like, and neither of them are wrong. Like, they're not, neither motivations are wrong. Like, you know, I think an extrinsic motivation would be, like, my goal of reading, like, 44 books this year, right? I want to read it because I just want to read 44 books. Like, there's really, like, nothing.
Like, you're not, like, I want to be a reader.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like, I just want to up my book count every year. Like, and I do enjoy reading, but I also, like, want to, like, read more.
Yeah.
But I think what I find, though, too, is, like, both work really well. Studies point to and research points to that intrinsic motivation is better in some situations just because it comes more internally. And so, like, a lot of the times, like, in books or movies or shows, you'll see characters that, like, go from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation, which is, like, actually, I have an example of it.
You have an example? Do we get story time with Jolene?
You get story time with another segment. Story time.
I want to put, like, a...
Yeah, we should cut in an intro and be like, and welcome to Story Time with Jolene. Please strap in and hold on tight. Because she doesn't know how to tell a linear story.
Say, it might take an hour.
but you'll get there. But so I actually found it online because I was like looking up. I was like, what would be a good example of it? Because I think sometimes when we're watching shows or movies, we observe it, but we don't really understand like, oh, like this is intrinsically motivated or this character is extrinsically motivated, right? But like Mulan is one of the examples I found. I haven't watched that movie in forever.
I haven't either.
Actually wanted to watch it again before we recorded this podcast, but I did not. So you're going to get like the rough version of Mulan. But I do remember. Strap in. But so in Mulan, you know, like she's actually a good example of both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, but you know, like in the beginning where she's like trying to fit in the beginning, she's extrinsically motivated, right? Because she's trying to like fit in and gain favor from her like parents and being like the perfect female, bringing like honor to her family by being like the good student and the pretty, like, you know, having like the makeup done right. Because I think I'm not gonna try to like say the word that like I think it is, because that I'm. I was like, I looked at you and I was like,
because I think.
I wasn't gonna say anything bad. I was just gonna try to pronounce a word that I'm probably not gonna get right, and I just was like, I don't need to go there today. But anyway, so she was like, so she does like her makeup very pretty, and like she like, you know, but she's like cheating because she like writes stuff on her arms to like pass the exams, and so it's not really that she's doing it for her, because that's not what she cares about. You can kind of tell because she's like more cares about like, I don't know what she cares about in the beginning, but you can just kind of tell that she's like doing it based out of fear of like losing her family's favor. But then her dad, because she had like a noble family if I'm not mistaken, and her dad gets called back into the war. What?
I'm sorry. It's like she has a noble family if I'm not mistaken.
I know, I like literally don't remember. Mulan was like not one of my favorite movies when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So this is just like, I'm trying to remember how many times I watched it. Oh, that was loud. I can't remember though. So here we are. So yes, Mulan. But anyways, and she has that little dragon. What I loved about Mulan was the dragon. Her little dragon friend. I thought he was awesome. I wanted a little dragon.
You still want a dragon.
I still want a dragon. Where's my dragon already? I'm 26. Come on, people.
Gonna fly by the window eventually.
Oh, gosh, I would literally jump out the window. I would be like,
you'd be gone forever. If a dragon ever came and like offered to take you away, like we would never see you again.
Yeah, that is true.
Yep, it would be the end of it.
I love how everyone knows that about me. They're like, oh, if Jolyn ever got the opportunity to live in a fantasy world, like,
you would drop all of us.
I would literally be like, sorry guys, this is an impossible opportunity to pass up. I can't lose this. Anyways. But yeah, but it'd have to be like I couldn't do like a little dragon. I'd need like a real big dragon.
Yeah.
But,
like fire breathing.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
that's what I would want.
Yeah, like I need a dragon that will slay my enemies.
Are you gonna start growling on every episode? Like, what is this? I feel so threatened.
I feel like so delusional right now.
So she goes by extrinsic motivation.
Yes.
And then what?
So she goes, that was Chester. So I told him to stay downstairs, but my cat does not listen. But anyways, so yes, Mulan, extrinsic, intrinsic motivation. I'm going back to dragons again, though, because I want to say I feel like, would you think that dragon would be, like, me having a dragon is an extrinsic motivation or an intrinsic motivation?
Like you wanting that?
Yeah. Like, do you feel like me wanting to be in a fantasy world is extrinsic or intrinsic?
No, I feel it's intrinsic.
Yeah.
I feel like it's what you, like, truly, like, you want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think so, too. I'm going to say it's intrinsic.
Yeah, I think it's intrinsic.
Like, if there was a way that I could make that a reality.
But I think you would do it not to meet any other goal other than, like...
Just to experience it.
Yeah, like, so I think it's intrinsic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. I think that, too. I like applying it to stuff like that too. Anyways, back to Mulan. So she's extrinsically motivated by the like need to fit in and like bring honor to her family and like serve her family, right? And then her dad gets called into war and like they're drafted and he has to like leave the next morning. And she takes his place. Like she sneaks out, dresses up like a man, and like takes his place, right?
Milana's kind of like the old, like, she's the man.
Oh my god, you're so right.
Which that's a movie I've been wanting to watch, but that's beside the
I
point.
want to watch that too now.
I really shouldn't have taken you off your...
Yeah, I got focused and now I'm like,
I'm sorry.
I could have used that as an example.
So she dresses up. Mulan dresses up like her, like tries to pass as her dad.
She tries to pass as her dad, and and also during her initial time in training, she is like trying to fit in with the men, and like she's having a hard time, you know, because she's not as physically capable because like she's a lot more like tiny and you know stuff like that, and so she's struggling in the movie, and she but it's like it's because she's like doing it based on the approval of the general or based on the approval of her peers in the army because she wants to fit in with them. And then there's this shift in her where I think it's like, I don't remember what happens, but I think she like almost gets kicked off out of the army or something like that. Or like she gets reprimanded or something. Anyways, her motivation changes and like you start seeing her like working harder and like finding like time to like, you know, be like doing it for her. Like she was doing it for like the reason of like she wants to be a better fighter. She wants to be stronger. She wants to like she gets knocked down and she wants to come back up and she like finds her value in like this specifically. And ultimately, if you haven't watched Mulan before, I'm about to spoil it. But also story time with Jolene is there's always going to be a spoiler.
Like, if you haven't watched Mulan, though, at this point,
yeah.
I mean...
So she basically... But the reason it becomes intrinsic is because she ultimately, though, does, like tell on herself. She's, like... She, like, reveals her identity and, like, says, like, this is who I am after saving somebody or saving, like, the festival. And you see, because she values honor and she values integrity, strength, and honesty. And at the end of the movie, you see her come into that intrinsic motivation and let go of all external validation just to like align with who she truly is. And like she lets go of that need for recognition and approval, which is that external or extrinsic motivation. And she hones in on her intrinsic motivation, which is to live by her values of like honesty, integrity, and, you know, strength. And so that's what she does. She like sheds that fake mask that she had on.
She's like, I'm a woman.
And she's like, this is who I am. And I think that shows like how, I think that also shows too how sometimes extrinsic motivation can like move into intrinsic motivation. But intrinsic motivation often comes from those like internal values of what we really are, like what really matters to us in life, like why we do what we do. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I can see whenever you give that example, that like helps it make sense for me as to why, I guess like it's said that intrinsic is like maybe can be better, is because I feel like you could almost see like extrinsic as like sometimes could apply to like people pleasing. Yeah. You know, because then like if you're doing it for the goal, like your goal could be like to please others or satisfy others, but like so it could make your motivation like misplaced almost. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's the way that made sense to me.
Right. And sometimes if even to like, I think extrinsic motivation can be empty-handed at the end. Like you get there and it's like, yes, you have like a lot of like movies will show like the villain getting to the end of like everything he's ever wanted, like, you know, and then he's left there alone by himself. And it's like all of that external motivation, all of that like goal-driven behavior to get to that goal of like having money and killing like the people who killed your father, like, you know, like doesn't really give you anything in here. It only gives, and when I say in here, I mean like your heart and like in your values in the heart. But it just gives you like it kind of leaves you empty-handed at the end of the day
Mm-hmm.
if you're not careful. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think the best motivation is when they're coupled together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's also another example I have is the Olympic athlete Shikari. She's the track runner that was disqualified for smoking weed in her Olympic trials or like pre-trials. And she was disqualified, and then she came back and she ran like the fastest she ever won, and she won a gold medal too. But I like to say too, I think that's a good example of like both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, because like won the gold medal, but I also think she wanted to, and obviously I'm assuming, but like I would like to believe that like when she got back out there and ran her best time, that she ran it for like to prove not only to other people like I deserved to be on that podium and I deserved a spot and I deserve a spot up here, but also to like prove to herself too like this is where I'm supposed to be and this is where I belong, and I like I don't have to like this is who I am, and I don't have to like prove to you, but I have to prove to myself like I've always belonged here. So
that's kind of wild to get disqualified for that, because you'd think like that like, it's not like weed is like a performance enhancing
they called
drug.
it doping. Yeah, like doping, like for I don't even know, but you know, but she was disqualified for it, and then she came back and she like won gold, and I was like, heck yeah, you did, girl.
I love that.
But she like, because she belongs on the podium because she's an amazing athlete, you know, and she like deserved that spot.
Yeah,
So
I forgot about that.
and she did it without having like tested positive for weed the second time, because it wasn't the weed, like, you know,
Right.
like it was,
I mean, like what?
yeah. Right, it was for
like
like
since when has weed like made anybody speedier?
right.
But I love that. I do. I love
Yeah.
that she came back and did it like for herself, and
Exactly, yeah.
that's a good example.
Yeah, and I think in her interviews too, she's like, it's for me and like not for anybody else, and I thought that was really cool, and just kind of that verbalization of that extrinsic but also like that intrinsic motivation. Like, yeah, the gold medal's there because that's like the height of like athleticism in the world, and like that's an extrinsic motivating factor, but the intrinsic motivating factor would be like, I'm here because like I deserve to be here because I'm like one of the best athletes
And she's like
in the
proving
world.
like she can do it, you know, like the right way and everything.
Exactly, yeah. But that's kind of the differences between the two motivations and like what I have like with my examples.
That's
so
cool.
what do you have for us today?
So I found an article on what's called the cost benefit calculation that I thought was really interesting, that I had never heard of, but I just found it when I was researching for this podcast. But the article is called The Behavioral Neuroscience of Motivation, and it's by Eleanor Simpson and Peter Balsam. But basically they're saying that like there's almost like sometimes like I do best with seeing like a black and white like math sort of calculation. And that's part of what I like about Atomic Habits, is just like the visualization of it, and not being as much of a like theory or whatever, like it's more black and white. But anyway, the calculation says that we weigh our cost, which would be like time, mental effort, risk, or like harm or danger, like the cost of something as in like a negative thing, and then the benefit, which is what we would get from it, which would be meeting our needs, wants, or just having comfort in life. And then like the cost versus the benefit decides like the level of motivation that we have. So like it was kind of explaining that. So as an example, like an easy example would be like if you wanted to start working out and like being healthier, and you wanted to like start exercising every day and work out hard every day because you want you want to be healthy, and so what you would attain would be like being healthier, living longer, quality of life, whatever. And then there's always going to be a cost, to something that you want to better yourself. Like it's normally not like just an easy thing of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do that. Like there's a cost of like,
Right.
I'm gonna have to wake up early and work out.
Wake up
Wake up
and
early
wake out.
and wake out. Wake up early and work out. You're gonna have to like sweat and then take a shower
Yeah.
afterwards. You're gonna have to wash more clothes because you're gonna have your
Yeah.
workout clothes. So there's like, it was just an interesting way of thinking of it because it's like basically that's how we decide motivation. It's like, is the cost of it worth the benefit to me? And if the cost outweighs the benefit, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be motivated to do it. But if the benefit outweighs the cost, then you're going to do it.
Is
So I thought
there
that was kind of interesting.
is there anything that they said that like is there a way you can like add to like the cost benefit
Well-
thing to like if like let's say
Like to help motivate you?
yeah like if it's
Yeah.
if
so,
the cost is outweighing it.
Yeah. So basically, they, part of what it was saying was like that it can be, and what I took from it too was just like that it could be a good thing to like, like list out all the benefits and stuff. And then like
Like a pros and cons list.
yeah, and that way you can kind of like show yourself like, okay, yeah, like this is what it's going to cost me, but then like these are my benefits. Because I feel like we tend to, this is like falling off my head. I feel like we tend to like think negatively and we tend to like think of the negatives, and we tend to, if we're, trying to set a New Year's resolution of working out every morning, we just like are so focused on like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to get up early every morning, and I don't want to like get on the treadmill, or I don't want to go outside in the cold and work out. Like it's like you think so much of that, but it's like harder to think about like, okay, well, what are the benefits going to be for me? Because we just think like, okay, I should work out, and I know I should because it's healthier, blah blah blah. But it's like we're
Right.
so focused on the cost of it. But if we,
Because the cost is like what I'm hearing too is like sorry, but the
No,
cost
you're
is
good.
more immediate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like you're thinking of the cost, and like that's what you're like putting in every day, and so like like it's like what the benefits of it don't come immediately.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you go work out and
Especially
you're
for-
like, that's great. Like,
Yeah.
like
Especially for long-term goals too.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like if you list out, like if you're setting a New Year's resolution or whatever, like I'm going to probably do this with working out, but it's like if you like make a list of like, like, okay, this is going to do this for me, this for me, this for me. Like these are the things that it's going to help in
Like
my
I'm gonna
life.
be
Like,
healthier, stronger,
Yeah.
faster, like more confident.
yeah, and then like that will help you to, but it can even help too to like list out the negative things. Like go ahead and,
Yeah.
don't avoid them, but be like, it's going to be hard to wake up early every morning. Like it's going to take time out of my day, but it's like looking at it and asking yourself like, well, like, does this list over here outweigh this list? And like if it does, then that just like helps you have motivation to be like, okay, well then I'll do it, because I can see that like although yes, this is hard and it's going to cost me, it's going to provide me with this list of things, instead of just being like, yeah, I know I need to work out, so I should, because
Yeah.
for me that hasn't worked. So that's something
Same.
I'm going to try.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot better.
Yeah.
Like taking it to like if you write it out, like tacking the list of pros or like the list of reasons why you should to like a wall or like in your exercise
I know,
room,
'cause
or on your bike.
It
like
helps
I
so
do,
much
should.
with like a visual thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I still need to look at your bike.
Oh yeah, you do.
After this.
I'll show
I'm so
you.
excited about it. I'm going to get on there.
Yeah, you can come over and use it anytime.
I wish you had two so we could work out together.
Stop. We would probably actually exercise all the time together.
Maybe we should put our treadmill in your bike, like,
That'd be nice.
I don't know how. Whatever.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Anyway, so there's that. And then in the same article, it was talking about dopamine. And my husband actually has a book called, I think it's called Dopamine Nation or something like that. But like I want to read it because dopamine is very interesting because it has so much of an effect on what we do and like motivation. It's like a huge part of motivation because it has the role of like the feeling you get whenever like you get the reward. But it's actually really interesting because my husband has told me a little bit about the book he's reading and how it talks about how like dopamine, you actually get a release of dopamine even whenever you're like anticipating a reward.
Yes,
Because I didn't even like know that really. Like I didn't know that
Yeah.
before you even get the reward, you can like just knowing that you're going to get
Yeah.
the reward, you can like release dopamine.
I actually like read, I don't know if it was a paper or if it was like an article, but I read something recently that actually said dopamine isn't the like reward. What am I thinking of? It's not neurochemical. It's the neurotransmitter.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Dopamine's not like the reward neurotransmitter. It's actually the like anticipatory like
Yeah, it's like
reward.
the precursor
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
And like serotonin is what comes after you get the reward. But like dopamine is like actually like the motivating, like it's like the motivation.
Well, that's what they say about like people who like gamble or whatever. Like they're so like whether they're like winning the money or not, they're like getting all this like this rush of dopamine. Like, or you can get a rush of dopamine when you're like on your way like to go do something that you really want to do. Like you get the dopamine
like getting ready to go out like for the night.
Yeah, like it's normally not like the actual action that brings the dopamine. It's like anticipating it, which is so interesting.
Yeah, because it's known as like the reward, like, but it's actually science is pointing to more recently, I think, or at least more recently for Jolene, the anticipatory. It's actually the anticipatory neurotransmitter because it's like it's actually not what comes after the reward. I like read that and it was like that blew my mind. I was like, what? Same. Maybe it was In the Mountain Is You. Was that what it was?
It might have been. That book included like everything possible.
Yeah. But it was really good because I had not even like I had never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because it like basically what the article was talking about is that like dopamine like does a good job of showing you like what you're motivated to do because like I guess what we were just saying like about how it
like gets you excited.
Yeah, like it makes you excited for things and like it kind of it like will show you where your motivations lie.
Yeah, so like I feel like I get like a little excited when I think about like being fit and like exercising and like, but I definitely don't get that feeling when I think about the actual practice of exercising. But it's actually dopamine is like what I feel in anticipation of the like, you know, exercising to like get me there. But it's not like what I feel on achievement. I feel like a serotonin is what you feel on achievement, or maybe like another one that I can't think of right now. But you know, I think that's so cool. I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah. There you go for the dopamine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so why is motivation important?
Yeah, so like we kind of been saying, it's that part of, it's very much like the definition. It meets our basic needs. So without motivation, we're just gonna kind of be floundering and like,
I like that word.
Yeah, I did too. But yeah.
I just picture being in the water, just like floundering around.
Yeah, I just think of like laying on like grass and like flopping like you're out of water, like a fish out of water, like just totally not.
I see.
Like, but like, yeah. Anyways, I was about to go into a really detailed idea in my head, and I did not need to do that. But yeah, I think motivation is what keeps us from floundering, but it also keeps us like alive. You know, motivation gets us to our goals, helps us not only survive but to live, and it also allows us to feel pleasure and experience life for like what it really is. So motivation is a crucial part of existing in this world.
Yeah,
a lot of like times, like that's why depression is so debilitating, is because it takes away or it limits your motivation, and like that's why it's so dangerous, because like you stop seeing like reasons to live and to be alive and like existing. And so that is why motivation and like the importance of motivation is such a crucial part of like being alive and existing in this world, and not only existing but participating in the world around you.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a good a good definition.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so but it is hard, right? Like we kind of talked about with like the dopamine and like getting on the bike. So why is it hard?
So I kind of like what you were just now saying. I had kind of put down like whenever we are feeling anxious or depressed or stressed, it can put us in, we've talked about before, like the freeze state, like fight, flight, or freeze. How whenever you're in the freeze state, you do have like a large lack of motivation. And that's something that I have dealt with personally for like the past couple of years. As you know, like I was dealing with a lot and not that I'm like not at all anymore, but like it's just much better recently. But like I, for the last couple of years, like have had like a long struggle with like a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like it's like rather than the depression, like it's anxiety for me that makes me just like have that complete lack of motivation, because I just get so overwhelmed that whenever I think about doing anything, like it feels too big a task and it feels too overwhelming. And so my motivation just goes to zero, because I'm like, why would I continue to do these like daily tasks that like take so much out of me? Or why would
Mm-hmm.
I, it's just too much to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so instead of like a lot of people get anxious and they like stress clean, or they go and they work out or whatever. Like I was always the opposite way, where like I would get too overwhelmed and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna not do anything actually. And my motivation was like not like zero, it wasn't there. And it is like I just wanted to say that because I want to validate like how
Yeah.
difficult it is like to be motivated.
Yeah.
Because you can like talk about it all you want, and like how to be motivated, and I like know so many resources on like books for motivation, because like I like read so many. And it's like sometimes whenever you are like another important part of motivation is like getting your anxiety or your depression like under control and like
Mm-hmm.
a manageable state, in whatever way you need to do that. Because without getting those things under control, it's really 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 hard to
Right.
actually be motivated. Because um, whenever your body is in that high level of stress or high level of depression or whatever, you get to where like you don't have any motivation,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have a tolerance for um, doing doing things like what you were saying, like participating in life. Like
Mm-hmm.
it kind of takes a lot out of you to do that. um, and just having that feeling of being overwhelmed and having a lack of action, is something that like I've had to work on a lot over the past couple of years. So yeah, I just wanted to say like how hard it can definitely be.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that like a lot, like it's a very common thing to struggle with, and that's
Yeah.
why we wanted to talk about it too, is that being motivated is really hard.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
it's hard.
Yeah, I think it's easy sometimes to like talk about things, and I
Mm-hmm.
know but a lot of the things, and I know we talk about things, but I also know that a lot of the things we talk about are also things that we think about or we have struggled with
Mm-hmm.
personally, but it's also just like things that we feel passionate about too. And I
Yeah.
know like that motivation was one of those big ones, is where sometimes it just feels like a big battle
Mm-hmm.
and like
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we are talking about it, is because
Mm-hmm.
there are like ways to get out of it, but it's also important to know like what it is and why it's important, like what is its purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and how can we apply it. And so I think I too want to validate
Mm-hmm.
that it is hard. And I think another reason that motivation is so hard is because, like you were saying a few minutes ago too, there's stuff that you have to do sometimes that you don't want to do before you get to the end goal of what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that cost benefit, like you were saying, is like sometimes the cost
Mm-hmm.
just seems too great.
Yeah.
And so I really love that example that you brought up, because
Mm-hmm.
that was spot on with like why it can be so hard, is like all those costs, all those like things that seem to be like in the way are actually steps to get to the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
But the way our mind talks to us is like our brains are really good at comparing and like synthesizing
Mm-hmm.
and like assessing data from previous examples,
Yeah.
or like watching other people do it, and our brains are like, oh no, like you can't do that, that's too
Yeah.
hard for you. And sometimes like our brains are really great and amazing, and they also can get in the way. Sometimes they can kind of trick us and like tell us like things that are not true.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, what you just said reminded me, like, what we talked about the cost benefit ratio, like,
Mm-hmm.
about writing it out. I feel like that is a good part of, like, writing out the negatives, is, like, writing them out for, like, what they really are. Because I feel
Right.
like like, my mind would sometimes, I remember being in therapy and, like, telling my therapist, like, like, why do I feel like that, like, folding a load of laundry feels like the biggest task in the world? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why can I go to work for 12 hours straight and like do my job and like work for 12 hours in the hospital and take care of people and do hard work. And why can I do that without thinking of it? But then, like, you know, I come home and go to bed and I wake up the next morning and like the only thing I need to do is like fold a load of laundry and I literally can't do it. Like, why am I frozen like that? And why do I like, why am I not able to do that? Because it just like drove me nuts. Like, I was like, what's wrong with me? And it's just like some like kind of the conclusion we came to is that like my brain, because I was overwhelmed, like, you know, like your emotions combined with like what your brain tells you is like, you know, like, oh, that's a lot, like that's such a big task. And like, I'm not like trying to belittle like that housework is hard, but it's like once I, you know, if I really like thought through it and like eventually once I got to it and did it, like it would take like 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, like was the act of like folding those things and carrying them to my room hard? Like, no. And my brain was like making it out to be something that it wasn't, just because I was in this state of
Because you were
like
already tired and
yeah, like inflating what it was. And so that's something is like, you know, really truly like telling yourself like a realistic version of like this is what I need to do. And that's something that like my mom always like tried to help me, is like she would tell me like, you know, write out the things that you need to do for the day, because I would, you know, tell her like, okay, I need to do this, and like I was such like in an anxious state. And you know, she always recommended like writing out the steps I needed to do and then like putting a time next to each one, like thinking like, okay, well, so I need to do some dishes, like that'll take me 10 minutes. I need to do some laundry, that'll take me 15 minutes. And she's like, you know, like how long will all of it actually take you? And just like getting a realistic read on it rather than like the way your emotions are like heightening your
right.
tasks.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, is that like not only do our brains trick us, but also our emotions can heighten like what we're fearful of, especially if
Yeah.
like we're already exhausted, we don't want to do it, and then like our brain's already like, you don't need to do this, like you go take a nap, girl, like you're fine. And like, yeah, absolutely, you should take a nap and you should take care of yourself and you should
Yeah.
rest. And at the same time, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do in order to get the actual peace that we want to have, because even if we take a nap and we rest, we still have that load of laundry we need to do,
Yeah, it's
or
always gonna be
you
waiting for you.
still have to send that email to your boss that you need to send. And like, yes, like you can take a nap and that's great and like rest, and at the same time it's still going to be there. If we ignore things, they don't go away, they just get bigger, actually, I think. And like
Yeah.
the longer we wait to do things, the bigger they seem to get in our minds, because our mind's like, oh well, you've been waiting this long, you know, like, so it must be really hard. And so that's why I think it's so important to like shift to intrinsic motivation, because intrinsically we can see like, okay, well, if I need to send that email to my boss, like I just got to do it to make him happy, like that doesn't make me want to do it, right? But if it's because like actually I value being an efficient and effective communicator, like that is like something that I like sing to, like in my heart sing to. I don't know where that came from, but like I guess it feels like a song in my chest when it like aligns with like what is like my values. So like if I'm like, yeah, I want to be an effective communicator, like that's something that's true for me. And so that is what I am more like easily motivated by than just like sending an email to like make somebody else happy, right? And same
And that
with
way, when
like,
you send it, it's not like,
yeah,
oh, good, now they're happy. Like, great, cool.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, instead of that, it's like you sent the email and you can say to yourself, you know, I'm like what you said, I'm a good communicator and I'm confident. And it just like raises your self-worth and like helps with the next time you have to do something.
Yeah. And like it also in the like, you know how in the beginning I said like our brains like collect data and like use analysis too, like it also collects data when we like override it, like when we are telling our brains like, actually no, I can do this, and I'm gonna do this even though I know it's gonna be hard. Like your brain will remember that and use it to stockpile it for next time. Like, so motivation is something, it's like a tool that grows with you.
That's so true.
So every time like you do something that's hard or something that you don't want to do but you need to do, it like you're showing your brain like, hey, I can do this, and like you like slowly like level up and take more steps too.
Yeah, that's so true, because that's how, I mean, I feel like that's like I was really destructive like for years, because I feel like every time that I like didn't do something, it was like a negative reinforcement of like, yeah, see, like you weren't able to do it, you waited another day, like you got more behind because you just couldn't do it. And it's just like reinforcing like, yeah, what I thought was true, like that was too much for me to do, like
Yeah.
that pile of clothes was too much for me to fold because I didn't do it again. And then like vice versa, every time that once I really started like really doing the hard thing and just doing it, like it's like it got easier every time because I was like, oh yeah, like I can do that.
Yeah.
And you know, like telling yourself like the 12 rules for life or was it 12 rules for life or was it, I don't know what book it was because I've read so many books, but one of my books on motivation, like it was like, you know, kind of like what it actually talked about the intrinsic motivation, like remember whenever I used to tell you that I would do like the clothes thing because I'd say like I don't leave my clothes on the floor because like I am organized and like an I am statement, and like it's like it made me like every time that I did what I had agreed to myself that I was going to do, it was just like a positive reinforcement of like, yeah, like I am organized. I am a clean person. Like I am,
It like validates that truth.
yeah. And that way, like it, like what I love what you said because it really does like it gets either easier or harder every time and you choose like which one you're putting a point to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like, I know I think I say this a lot, but one of my favorite quotes is like, you choose your hard. And so you choose whether like it's hard to like not be motivated and not do anything. And it's also hard to like be motivated and do things that are hard too. Like I know that was like a really, I don't know if that worked, but like you get to choose which hard you're going to do because no matter what choice you make, you're going to encounter hard at some point. Whether that be like I'm really disappointed with myself for choosing to watch a movie instead of like finishing sending emails or like doing a load of laundry or like doing a load of dishes, right? It's or like calling my friend that I haven't talked to in forever, you know, versus like I'm really disappointed in I don't know, like another hard would be like it's really hard to maintain a long distance friendship, and also I'm very happy that I am because like that's important to me, you know, like friendship's important to me, and so like although it's hard to maintain a long distance friendship, I'm glad I'm doing it, right? And that's another hard.
Yeah.
So you get to kind of choose that hard. But
Yeah.
anyways, so
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, I think that's one of my favorites. But talking about like how difficult motivation can be and like how it can be hard when you don't have that motivation, I think it's also important for us to really talk about how we can apply it when it's hard.
Yeah.
So, what do you have?
I think so. This is where I'm kind of going to reference Atomic Habits because it's where I found most of my, like, not where I found my motivation, but where I found, like, the habits to, you know, get into applying things. But so basically, routine is what I'm going to talk about. So, routines basically, like I like to interchange routines with habits because anything that you like repetitively do could be called a routine or something that you've made a habit of doing, right? So that's why I think the book applies to routine so well. But so I'm just going to say a couple of quotes and talk about them. But one of my favorite quotes in the book says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I see the word systems as like habits or routines. And so that's one of the things that I love that James Clear says is like instead of like you don't set a goal and just naturally like become like, you know, that's why so many New Year's resolutions like fall through is that, you know, you don't say like, okay, I'm going to like become a bodybuilder and it just kind of like happens and you're like, oh great, like so that I guess that means I'm gonna work out every day, whatever. No, instead like you set your system, your routine for your day, and then like that's what you're gonna realistically be, like whatever you actually can bring yourself to like do every day is what you're gonna be. So you're always gonna fall to the level of like what you set your routines for.
I like that.
And so it's like whatever we make our daily routine, that's going to be the deciding factor of what our life is like because we can't expect to be better than what we do every day. And I think that that's something that I've struggled with in the past is like thinking, you know, that if I really want something, it's kind of like the same thing talking about extrinsic motivation. Like I kind of used to trick myself into thinking like, well, like if I really want to like be this person, or if I really want to do this, like, you know, eventually I'll get there. And instead, this book kind of just made me realize that it's like you have to look at like what you're willing to put in and what you're willing to do every day, and then like that's all you're gonna become. Like you're not gonna get to do like those big dreams that you just like, you know, dream about or think about if you're not putting in like the work to get there. And it can apply to like small things too. And then something else that I didn't write down, but one of my favorite things in the book is, which I think it says it on the back.
You got it.
But yeah, like it says at the top, like a revolutionary system to get 1% better every day. People think when you want to change your life, you need to think big. World-renowned habits expert James Clear has discovered another way. He knows that real change comes from the Wow, I'm gonna start over. Has discovered another way. He knows that real change comes from the compound effect of hundreds of small decisions. Doing 2 push-ups a day, waking up 5 minutes earlier, or reading just one more page, and he calls those atomic habits. So it's really interesting because he kind of talks about like how if you like to not make your goals too big, which for me is like really like appealing, because to me it's overwhelming to think to think about like, you know, saying like, oh, you know, like some big goal. Like I don't do well with those, and it's also just like very daunting, and then you tell yourself like, oh, I don't know, like it doesn't seem like I can do that. And it's not realistic either. But he talks about how if you got 1% better, I don't know if he goes by day or not, but like just as a theory, like he kind of talks about like if you got 1% better, just one tiny percent better each week, then like at the end of the year you'd be 52% better. And so it's like just like small and slow changes will make such a like large impact. And that really like resonated with me because you know, like to me it doesn't seem really realistic to just say like, okay, like starting tomorrow I'm gonna work out for an hour every day. And that's something that like maybe I would do it for like 2 days, and then I'm like, okay, you know, like this isn't realistic for me. But it's like if you just like start off with something so small, and you know, you're like, I'm just gonna walk on the treadmill for like 5 minutes, or you know, like I've been doing my like morning like breathing, and I just do it for 5 minutes, and it's like just like a very small goal is so much more attainable.
Right.
And he also says this actually goes a lot with the intrinsic motivation thing, but he says the more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it.
I love that.
Yeah, and I just love that approach because it kind of like starts, it's like a values like down approach. And it's like, okay, like I know when we talked about values, like it's like, you know, if I want to be authentic, then I can like, you know, you could almost like make a list and be like, okay, authenticity is what I want. That's my like, that's the part of my identity that I want to like really be. And then you can say like, okay, well, like, how am I going to be authentic? Like, I'm going to this, like, these are the things that I need to do to become authentic. But it's like I like how he says that, like, basically what you were talking about, like if it's something that you want to be and like where you find your identity, you're going to have so much more like pride in it, and that's going to cause you to have so much more motivation to actually do it.
Right. And to go to your bodybuilder example too, like
yeah,
if you're doing bodybuilding because like you just want to like look like a bodybuilder, like that's an external factor, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if it's because I want to challenge myself because I enjoy challenging myself, like that would be an intrinsic factor.
Exactly.
I like really challenging myself. I like to be very fit. You know, I care about having a healthy body.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
And I think too, like making that just brings up the point of like making sure that your goals actually align with like who you want to be, because I think that so often like I have tried to like either make a New Year's resolution or like tried to I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank Thank you.
You're welcome.
Or
That
like,
was like the softest sneeze I've ever
it
heard.
really was.
It was like,
It really was. Oh, I'm just like, I'm glad that happened, that it wasn't
yeah,
super loud in
that
the
was such like a
microphone.
pleasantly soft sneeze.
Thanks.
Look at you, little perfect sneezer.
Yeah, it's not normally like that. Every time I sneeze, Taz like meows.
No, because Chester does
Does
that
he?
too, and I always think he's telling me bless you. Like without a doubt, I
Maybe
think
that's what Taz
he's
is
doing.
doing. Because literally, I always, like this morning, I sneezed and he just like, as soon as I sneeze, he goes, meow.
It's so cute. He's saying bless you.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I love that. Our cats are blessing us.
Yes.
In more ways than one.
True.
But yeah, so making sure that your goals like are actually aligned with your, sorry, that your routines are aligned with your goals, are
Right.
aligned with like your values, because sometimes I feel like people, or including myself, like sometimes like we'll just come up with the most like random, you know, like goals. Like you're just like, oh, what would be a good goal? Like, I want to run a marathon this year. And it's like, for me, like that doesn't mean anything to me. Like that, if I
It'd
did
just
run
be
a
that.
marathon, yeah, like it's just, it is what it is. And it's just like something to say that you did. So that's not gonna like, that doesn't bring up any like pride in myself, and that doesn't make me like want to practice to run a marathon or run every day or anything, because so it's like I'm not gonna do it. So setting a goal, like I just love the idea of like writing out the identity that you want and the values that you want, and then like writing out like what goals would actually align with those and what routines would like help you get there, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
But
But
yeah, that's pretty much all for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that book has
Application.
a lot more things in it, but I can't. It would take me like 5 hours to talk about.
I do want to say one more thing about application that I didn't add, but I also want to acknowledge too that like if it is difficult for you and you're listening to this and you're like, that's great, but I'm depressed, like, you know, or that's great, but I literally can't do that. Like,
Yeah, that
to
was
give
me.
yourself grace, you know, and
Yeah.
like to also like if you need to, sometimes like we need an extra boost, whether that be going to your healthcare provider and like finding a medication that works for you, if you need like an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, or if you need to go to therapy and like seek help that way too. Like there's tons of groups on motivation, there's groups on routines, but there's also groups for people who struggle with depression and anxiety, because like Tiffany said, anxiety can freeze us and depression can also like freeze us. But it can put us in those states of where we just feel hopeless. And so I don't want anybody listening to this to feel invalidated
Yeah.
by the fact that like motivation, like, and I don't think that we've done that, but if that did come across that way,
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. And I do want to validate the fact that sometimes like an application part of it is that you need to take an extra step and go seek help from someone, because we can't do it on our own.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah,
know for
that's good.
Tiffany and I, like, I know like for Tiffany and I, like we've used books and like we've used medication and like
Therapy.
we've talked in therapy, you know, so there's like a host of things that we've also done to like find motivation.
Yeah.
So this is what's worked for us, and like that's why I want to emphasize the importance of finding what works for you. You know, like sometimes you need something to help you get out of that place, and like there's no shame in needing extra help, there's no shame in reaching out for help.
And I just wanted to add to that too, because that's like something that I think it was, yeah, it must have been in therapy, like something that whenever I was like, it's really easy, or it's really common, I think, at least for me, I was really hard on myself. Like whenever I didn't have motivation, like even though I didn't have the motivation, I like wanted it so badly. Like and that was part of what was so hard for me, is I wanted to like do all these things. Like I wanted to keep up my house, and I wanted to like have dinner every night ready, and I wanted to clean, and I wanted to cook, and I wanted to go do my job well, and I just like, you know, like you want to be a productive person. And so I wanted all of these things, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it, and I would beat myself up over it a lot. And that's kind of why what I said earlier, you know, about like validating that like I struggled with it for years, like, And I'm really like just now getting around to like really like refining that and like doing good at doing like a routine. And so it is so hard. And I think too, like that's something that my therapist said to me, whenever like I would come in every week and just be like, yeah, like again this week, like I just like have struggled and I've struggled to find the want to do anything, and it's been really hard and I feel really tired and I'm really frustrated with myself. And like something that she like validated me and told me, that maybe maybe right now, like you can't, like I do want to say, like you can't start with like just trying to like go and like figure out how to do everything. Like sometimes like you need to like look inward and like give yourself compassion and kindness, and like that there's things that you may need to work through like before you take that step. And that's kind of what my therapist told me, is like she was like, I mean, it might be hard, but like right now like productivity is not like what we need to focus on, because if you're in this like freeze state and you feel like debilitated, like you feel like you can't do anything, like we need to look at why. We don't need to be like, oh, we need to fix that right now. And so I like what you were saying, like it's like it like I want this to be helpful, but at the same time, if you're at the stage where you're in like a freeze state and like you don't feel any motivation at all, then you might need like some therapy or someone to talk to, and to kind of like get to the root of that first, and then like come back to that sort of information whenever like you are kind of out of that.
Absolutely.
So I totally agree with what you said.
Yeah, I definitely
because it can be a long road.
Yeah,
I know for me it's been like a really long struggle.
Yeah, and I do think like it's something we'll work on for the rest of our lives too. Motivation fluctuates like throughout your life, and like there's going to be times where you feel extra motivated and there's going to be times where you don't feel so motivated. And so I think knowing what is motivating you, why are you here, what's important to you, and at the same time, like being able to have resources to act on it, like books, like notes, like Tiffany said, like the diagram where it's like the comparison there, like pros and cons, finding resources that help you stay motivated and remind you of like why you're working towards what you're working towards.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that's about all we have for y'all and for us for this pod. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And next week we will be talking about the value of honesty and how it affects different aspects of our lives. We're kind of going back into values because we just like loved our values so much. And
we only talked about like one of them. So we're just going to talk about that next week.
Exactly. Because honesty was like on the top for both of us. And so we definitely really enjoyed our values podcast.
And do a little deep dive in honesty.
And we wanted to get back into it.
Yeah. But if you like this episode, just remember to share the podcast with friends and family. So like and share and subscribe on all of our streaming platforms. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Follow us everywhere, and share. We always have our email, Confront Your Mind. We're Confront Your Mind on all platforms, and then we're confrontyourmind@gmail.com. If you want to send us a little mail,
send us a little mail.
And we're always open to any like suggestions on topic ideas, or feedback, or if you have any questions or anything. But we would love topic ideas too. That what you guys want to hear. Yeah, or your thoughts. I always love hearing people's thoughts. Yeah. But remember that we're all learning. And don't be afraid to get confrontational this week. Keep it cute until we meet again. Cheers. Cheers, Miss Girl.